Hi guys, today I'm going to go over some of the oldest files in the Linux operating system, initially developed under the Unix operating system, and that's the etc password file and the etc shadow file. These are some of the most important authentication files needed for the operating system to be able to authenticate their users and for processes to run as well. So just keep watching. I'll show you the important information you need to know about the password file and what's in the shadow file and kind of how the operating system kind of access these files. So just keep watching and I'll show you some easy information you need to know if you're working in the Linux environment.
The first step is opening up a terminal window in your Linux environment. This way you could access the command line and issue some Linux commands that will give us some information about the password file. So if you do a cd, change directory into /etc, we're going to do a long listing of the password file. You can take a look at the permissions. So when the password file was initially developed with the Unix operating system, it was designed to contain user information, encrypted passwords, UID, group ID, and the shell information. Now you can take a look at the very first entry in all password file is the root entry, and the root entry will always have the UID and the group ID as 0 and 0, just designated as the super user. It has a comment field, which in this case is root. The home directory is listed, always starts with the slash, and the shell, the default shell. So on most Linux operating systems now, it is the bash shell or the born again shell. If you go to some older operating systems, C shell. Now, if you notice, there's also the no login. This is actually so that the shell that spawns when you try to log in doesn't exist. Now, when the Unix operating system initially developed, it had the encrypted password in the password file, but since the password file had read permissions for a lot of applications to be able to use it, it was considered a security risk. That is when the etc shadow file was developed. It has no permissions for any user to view it, so it's really just can be viewed by any process running as root. If a process is running as root, then it could view the encrypted password. So I'm going to change user, switch users to into the root shell. You can then notice designated by that pound symbol there. So we're going to do a long listing on the etc shadow file, and you notice the permissions will still be 000, which means it has no permissions, read, write, execute for the user group or everyone. But as root, you could actually bypass these permissions. So we're going to do a long listing. We're going to do a more on the file so you can take a look at the content. If you notice, it looks very similar to the password file, as if you count the colons, it actually adds up to the same thing. But if you notice that second field is no longer an X, it's actually a very long encrypted password. Now, if you notice the encryption, you can actually tell what kind of encryption the system's using by the first few characters of the encrypted. So when the etc password file was initially developed and people could actually read the encryption, people were actually starting to be able to crack the encryption. And if you notice, there's actually asterisks and pound symbols in that second field of this etc shadow file, and that's designating it as no encrypted passwords. So there's actually no option. So these users do exist, mostly so a process can run as that user, but it actually is not capable of accepting a login where you actually log in and get a shell. So again, that's where the etc no login comes from, or the /bin no login comes from. So again, here is just another security measure. And if you look at the etc nsswitch.conf file, you notice there's entries for password in shadow, and the first entry is file.
Thanks for watching, guys. Don't forget to take a look at your etc password and etc shadow file and see how it's configured and what's in there. Otherwise, I'll see you guys next time, and subscribe to get updates. Bye.